Good morning, everybody. Good morning, members of the public present, and good morning to my executive members. Before we start the meeting, it is with I'm very sad to have to announce the passing of David May yesterday. David was in many ways a larger-than-life figure in our council. He was funny, generous and kind, and a devoted family man. He was a successful businessman and a competent, hard-working colleague who served his constituents well for a long time. And lastly, he was a much valued and appreciated member. Our thoughts and prayers are at this very sad time, and our condolences. Members, we will now have a minute's silence in honour of David. Thank you, members. While I'm on the subject, we have apologies this morning from Councillor Rowe and Councillor Pennington, and I think we should all remember that it's Councillor Pennington's wife's funeral at lunchtime today, and Councillor Rowe, as our chairman, is attending his funeral. So we thank her for that, and we should be thinking of Trevor today. Right. Members, minutes of the last meeting, can we approve as a collect record the minutes of the meeting of the executive held on the 22nd of October 2020? Are you all content, members, that they're a correct record?
Agreed.
Agreed, Chairman.
Thank you. Right. Urgent business. There is one item of urgent business which I intend to bring forward before the executive forward plan, after the public question time, if that's agreeable to members. Division of the agenda. I don't see any need to divide the agenda this morning, but should that become necessary, as and when, we shall do it. Declarations of interest. Members, you're invited to declare any personal or disclosable pecuniary interests, including the nature and extent of such interests that they may have in any items to be considered at this meeting. Members, do you have any interest to declare?
No.
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 No interest.
Thank you. Public question time. We'll now go to our public question time, and I will invite. I'm so sorry. I'm having trouble seeing this because my printer, instead of printing things out in red, has printed them in yellow, so it's really difficult. Jonathan. Councillor Hawkins, have you got the questions? Could you invite the first questioner to read out his question, please? Because I'm afraid I haven't got them in front of me.
Yes, Leader. Would Mr. Tony Dale please read his question to us, please?
Chair, Councillor Hawkins, Mr. Dale was not on the call.
Thank you. Well, in that case, could you just read out the answer? Could you read out the question and the answer, please, Councillor Hawkins?
Okay, thank you. This is from Tony Dale. Clean Air Strategy Draft for Totnes AQMA. This is the question. In reference to Totnes, it makes no recommendation for planting of any sort. Yet trees and shrubs are the only available tool for mitigating NOx emissions. Can the department liaise with landscapes to ensure the science of trees and air quality is fully understood and able to be actioned? That's the question, and this is the answer. Since the early days of the local air quality management legal regime in the 1990s, DEFRA guidance for reducing pollution has focused very much on technical measures for getting pollutant levels below the legally binding objectives in as short a time as possible. In Totnes, the only pollutant listed in the legislation that breaches the objective level is nitrogen dioxide, NO2, which is breached at specific locations alongside the A385. Along with other local authorities, Southams District Council has tried to follow DEFRA guidance and advice on reducing this pollutant, and measures in our air quality plans and the air quality strategy have therefore tended to focus on technical means to directly reduce the sources of nitrogen dioxide, e.g. by promoting the use of less polluting technology in vehicles and the increased use of more sustainable travel, as well as liaising with Highways Authority, Devon County Council, about improvement to road layouts. Very recent research, and that's reference 1, suggests that this approach is justified because although vegetation is generally beneficial for air quality, as plants can take some pollutants out of the air, it is not seen as an effective overall solution to air quality problems. This is because the beneficial impacts of vegetation on air quality vary according to circumstances and the pollutant under consideration. For example, regarding nitrogen dioxide and other nitric oxides, vegetation has been deemed to be generally of little benefit. It is reported that uptakes of NOx gases is not effectively made by vegetation, and soil can actually add to this. So the presence of soil in an urban environment could at least partially offset any potential benefits of vegetation. Trees and other vegetation can act as a barrier to pollutants in the air, but such barriers may be impractical to implement in narrow streets where the worst excesses of nitrogen dioxide tend to occur. Indeed, in Totnes, a key location where NO2 levels exceed the objectives is the terrace of cottages immediately adjacent to the road at Bridgetown Hill. Planting trees along here would clearly not be possible. In some situations, tree planting can exacerbate the build-up of pollution within streets by reducing airflow, hence reducing dilution of the pollutants. Moreover, some tree species increase pollution directly as they give off biogenic volatile organic compounds, which can enhance the formation of particulate matter and oxygen. However, despite these issues, it is agreed that there are many benefits of trees and other plants with urban landscapes, e.g. improving the environment, usually provide the shade, shelter, and helping counter climate change, increasing biodiversity. And I am grateful to the Inquirer for bringing up this interesting subject in relation to our clean air strategy. Our current clean air strategy is dated 2018. It is due to be revised at least every 5 years, and in the next revision we will consult with our colleagues within landscaping, planning and climate change about introducing planting considerations in situations where it is felt that they can make an overall improvement to the environment, including air quality. The reference I made is the impacts of vegetation on urban air pollution, which was prepared by the Department of Environment, Food and Rural Affairs, the Scottish Government, Welsh Government and the Department of the Environment in Northern Ireland and the Air Quality Group of 2018. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you, Councillor Hawkins. Question 2 is from Mr. Derek Hoare, and I can see he is present. So, Mr. Hoare, would you like to read your question, please?
Yeah, good morning. Can you hear me?
I can hear you very well, thank you. Yes.
Yeah. Good morning, Madam Chair and Executive Committee members. Thank you for letting me ask this very relevant question regarding the ongoing situation with the funding to allow the now urgently refurbishment project of our Malden Village Torfield Play Park to commence. This is as per item 11 on today's agenda. The question is, can the committee advise Malden residents when they envisage releasing Section 106 money, bearing in mind clause 5.11 has now been sufficiently fulfilled and clauses 5.13 and 5.17 are not possible due to COVID restrictions? And will they use their executive powers to overrule our ward councillor who is against the project? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hall. Councillor Hawkins will reply to you.
Mr. Hall, thank you very much for your question. S106 funds will be allocated in accordance with the recommendations of the report. The recommendations have been updated and the updates will be reported under item 11. Paragraph 5.17 is still valid and refers to remaining 106 funds after the allocation of up to £45,000 towards the Torfield area project. Thank you.
Thank you. Do you have a supplementary question, Mr. Hall?
No, that's fine. Thank you very much, Councillor Hawkins.
Right, thank you.
Thank you.
And the next question is from Mr. Page, and I can see that he is present. Mr. Page, would you like to read out your question? You will need to unmute first. Mr. Page, if you can unmute, we're waiting for you. Right. It looks as though you're ready to start now.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. Good morning, Madam Chair and executive members. Does the executive think that they were correct in allowing questions at their last meeting to be asked which publicly denigrated Malden Parish Council, whilst not reading out our responses to those questions publicly, leaving a completely unbalanced and wrong perspective of the whole regeneration progress, i.e. Torfield, Playfield, under question to prevail? Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Hawkins will now read the response from us.
Gordon, thank you very much for that question. We recognise that the renewal of the Torfield play area has generated strong feelings on both sides of the argument. However, the public right to ask questions at the meetings of the executive is an important part of the council's interaction with the community. While there are some necessary limits on what can be asked, if a question is within the scope allowed, then there is no reason why that question cannot be answered.
Thank you. Mr. Page, do you have a supplementary question?
Well, basically, the vast majority of people in Malden are for the regeneration. We had a survey last month, well, sort of which showed over 80% compliance to A, to the regeneration, and B, to the financial structures that we've got in place to pay for it. So I believe that the minority of people who are objecting are having an over sort of exposure to the situation. I realise that everybody has a right to state.
Mr. Page, I think you're making a comment rather than asking a question.
Okay.
And may I say that I think that was largely the problem last time. Your comments arrived too late, and they were comments, not questions, so we couldn't include them. But I think you will agree by the end of this morning's meeting that we have done everything we can to turn the situation round and to get the funds for you so that you can move forward with this project. And you, as a parish council, have done sufficient consultation to satisfy the regulations we have on releasing this money. So I thank you for that.
Thank you.
Now, both of you, may I ask you, you're welcome to stay in our meeting, and I expect you probably want to hear item 11. Could I ask you now to go on to mute and turn off your cameras so that you come off our screens and I have room to see more members on my screen? But thank you very much for attending.
Thank you.
Right, members, we've had public questions, so now we will move on to the urgent item, which is the distribution of the additional restriction grants. This is an additional paper, which you will find as a separate item on your modern.gov agenda papers. Members, the executive summary gives us a very good idea of what this paper is about. It is required to administer the funds issued to the council for the additional restriction grants as direct business grants and for wider business support activity. The funding available to South Hams District Council for distribution is £1,740,080, but this sum has to last until March 2022. And the proposed scheme for administering the fund is attached in Appendix A to the paper. The scheme is aligned in principles to other second-tier authorities in Devon and is open to all businesses, with a few exceptions that can evidence a significant impact from the national lockdown or subsequently from Tier 3 restrictions. Unfortunately, we're not in Tier 3. Due to the resources available and work required to assess the processing of each application, it's anticipated that it could take a month from the closure of the scheme to conclude the payments. The wider business support element of the additional restriction grants, proposed at 50,000 at this time, is yet to be finalised, but the paper includes suggestions for the support we could offer. Members of the executive, do you have any questions on this paper? If you have, could you show with the hands up facility in the box, please? No, I can't see any questions. Other South Hams members, does anybody have any questions about this? If you do have questions, could you show in the chat box, please? Right, I can't see any questions coming up. In which case, we'll move into the debate on this. Does members of the executive, do you wish to raise anything on this paper? I think it's fairly straightforward. We know that businesses desperately need this help and that the application process is open. No further questions on this, and in which case, members...
Is my hand not up, Chairman?
Is your hand not up? I can't... No. Oh, I beg your pardon, it is up. I was expecting it to appear on your picture as well. No, it is up. Yes.
I just wanted to endorse what you said, Chairman, because I feel that this, the additional restrictions grant, is very important to those that have struggled to keep their businesses going when they've not, for example, been business rates payers. And this is a useful addition to help those that are not able to claim through that process. I've had one or two inquiries myself and diverted them this way, and hopefully we will be able to help all businesses in one way or another.
Thank you, Councillor Basten, for that helpful contribution. Does anybody else wish to say anything? Because if not, we'll go to the vote on this.
Chair, before we do, Chair, we haven't actually proposed and seconded the recommendation.
I'm so sorry, you're quite right, yes. Well, in that case, I propose the recommendations at the top of the paper to note the additional restrictions grant scheme in Appendix A, including the scheme of delegation to administer it contained therein, and approve the use of £50,000 from this grant fund for wider business support measures. Expenditure against the reserve to be delegated to the Director of Place and Enterprise and the Head of Placemaking in consultation with the Leader of the Council. Thank you. I propose those. Do I have a seconder?
Seconded, Chairman.
Fine. Is everybody in agreement with those?
Agree.
Yes.
Agreed.
Thank you.
That's carried. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Mr. Hall, could I ask you if you could turn your camera off, please? Thank you. Right. We'll move on to the next item on the agenda, which is the pay and display charges review. Councillor Baldry, would you like to introduce this paper, please?
Thank you. Thank you, Chairman. I assume all members have read the papers. I have here with me, I think, in the background to help me out, Emma Widdicombe, Laura Watton, and I think Chris Brook is here as well, who will help out with as many questions as I am unable to answer directly. This is a recommendation that we go for public consultation to take place in January. And if the council decides these proposals, the changes will come into effect from the 1st of April next year. If agreed today and by the council, this will be the first price increase at the council-owned car parks since July 2018. And as is our usual consultative ways, our officers have been talking with our town and parish council to find sensible solutions which fit their particular areas. I welcome this discussion, and I will come in later in the debate and propose the motion once we've dealt with questions. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Members of the executive, do you have any questions on this paper?
No.
No?
No, Leader.
Councillor Hopwood.
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, the question I have is regarding the electric charging points. And I was wondering, do we have any time scales for when we can see electric charging points rolled out to more of our car parks?
Well, thank you, Councillor Hopwood. We already, of course, have electric charging points in the Ivorybridge car park, which was part of the scheme being run out by Devon County Council. And if any officers want to come in with the timescale, we will be rolling out electric charging points over the course of next year. But if any of the officers wish to come in, they're welcome to do so.
Thank you, Councillor Baldry. I can answer that. So currently with the Deletti project, we are out to procurement at the moment for suppliers. So that will be evaluated in the new year. And as Councillor Baldry said, we will look to start the installation next year.
Thank you. Right. If there are no further questions from the executive, I will now open this up to questions from the floor. Are there any questions from members on this paper? Please show in the chat box if you have got a question. I don't see anything coming up. In that case, Councillor Baldry, would you like to propose the recommendations, please?
Thank you, Leader. I propose the recommendations as stated on the paper at item 1 to 11. I would welcome a second.
Perhaps we can see the second half of those as well, so that everybody's clear what we're talking about. Thank you. Right. Members of the executive, does anybody wish to debate any aspect of this?
Chairman, I would welcome a seconder, please.
Oh, sorry, you haven't got one. Well, I'm happy to second your
thank you.
Your proposals. Members of the executive, yes, Councillor Bastone.
I think Councillor Hopwood raised an important question when she asked about the electric charging points. It's something that we as members are getting pressured on most months, or if not weekly, about when are we going to see some charging points. I'm going to be a bit parochial, in Dartmouth here, I was in the visitor centre helping out one day before the lockdown, and a lady came in and said, "Where's the nearest charging point?" So we had to say Paynton or Totnes. Well, Totnes is 13 miles away. Paynton is a ferry ride and 7 miles the other side of the river. So it is something we're persistently asked about in Dartmouth. When are these charging points going to be put in? We've been promised 2 in the main car park in Mayor's Avenue, 2 in the park and ride, and more when the Health and Wellbeing Centre is built, which was approved yesterday at Development Management. What would be nice would be if we had a programme of installation so that we have something we can point to and say to our residents, this is what is going to happen. All we have is a few words saying it will be considered next year. It would be nice if we had a laid out programme of how and when these are going to be installed.
Thank you, Councillor Bustone. That's something that we can take up with the County Council because they're in charge of this scheme. And meanwhile, Councillor Baldry and Mrs. Widdicombe, can we ask you if you could make further inquiries about this, please, and give us an answer on it when you can? Councillor Baldry.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, I am too. I'm being pressurised for having more charging points put in. What I think what we will do is we will pressurise, as you suggest, the County Council who are running it, and produce a programme which we probably publish in the members' bulletin, but maybe ask communications to put it out into the public arena as well. Mrs. Widdicombe is nodding.
Yes, once the evaluation's been taken place, then obviously we'll have a much clearer programme on the schedule of the installation. So I'll definitely be able to give you an update then.
Thank you very much for that. Councillor Hawkins, you'd like to say something?
It's on exactly the same subject. I can't understand why we can't progress with this quicker. We've been asking these questions now for the last 6 months, and we don't seem to have got an awful lot further. Ivybridge has got its 2 in, but even 2 simply isn't enough. If we've all got to be driving non-diesel petrol cars within the next 15 plus years, we're going to have these installed as fast as we possibly can now over the coming years. So I would hope perhaps we could ask Emma to bring a proper schedule, perhaps to an executive in the new year.
Thank you. Yes, I think that's
Councillor Hawkins, I hear what you say. You know better than I do. You are a county councillor, and no one could bring greater influence on the county council than a county councillor. And as for the question of you'd like to see the 2 charging points having greater use in Ivybridge, I have had a conversation only a week ago with Councillor Abbott, one of our representatives from Ivybridge, who says he has yet to see a vehicle parked there and charging.
Thank you, Councillor Baldry. Councillor Hopwood. You need to
put my hand down because Councillor Baldry said exactly what I was going to say. Councillor Hawkins, you are a member of Devon County Council, so you can put more pressure on them than anyone. So get pressuring.
I can assure you I do.
Thank you. Councillor Bustone, do you want to come back, or have you just taken your hand down?
Yeah, no, I'd like to come back. I think this is a classic example of putting the electric chargers in the wrong place and putting them in Ivybridge when you could have put them in Dartmouth where they would have had greater use.
Well, you're being a little bit parochial, Councillor Bustone. May I remind you, it was the Highways Authority that installed those charging points as being near one of the strategic routeways in Devon. So,
well, or even in Kingsbridge, they would have been much more useful, I would have said.
Well, that you may well be right, but that's where they are. So, right.
Leader, can I just say you've given the absolute correct answer. It was put in Ivybridge so that people using a much more important thoroughfare than the Dartmouth ferry could drive along the A38. It was available for their use for people on their journeys.
Fine. Now, do we have any more comments from the executive? Because if not, I'm going to move over to Councillor Taylor, and this is probably a good moment to remind non-executive members to, if you want to ask a question, to put your query in the chat box rather than putting your hand up. But Councillor Taylor, you wanted to come in?
Yeah, I'm sorry, Judy. I mean, I was just going to back up Councillor Baston's remarks about the charges, really. And how are they getting prioritised? That's just a straightforward question, really. But because we get, and like all the rest of the guys have said, all the rest of the councillors, we do get harassed every single parish council meeting from all over. I know you can't put them in every parish, but how do they get prioritised? How do you work it all out? Thank you.
Yeah, okay. So the Councillor Baldry, could you give the details of the county scheme as it is at the moment?
No, but Mrs. Widdicombe can. But we are being driven by the county council, who are setting the priorities for this. But this is just an aside. I know it is chicken and egg, and we need more charging points for people to start purchasing electric vehicles. But I travel around a great deal before COVID, and I see very, very few vehicles being charged. Almost in the centre of Plymouth, there are charging points. Nobody is ever charging their vehicles. If I go up the motorway, there are charging points in the service areas. No vehicles being charged there. So the thought that there will be an enormous demand in some of our very small parishes for charging points, people can charge at their own homes if they wish to do so. I think we are in the hands of the county, and Mrs. Widdicombe will give a more tactful answer than I just did.
Sorry, Mrs. Widdicombe, would you like to come in?
Thank you. So through the Deletti project, we had European funding money, and what we did with that was we ensured that we had electric charging points installed in at least all of our towns. So we're having them installed in Totnes, Ivybridge, we've already got it in Ivybridge, Kingsbridge, Dartmouth, Salcombe, Modbury. So that's the start of it. We also have the opportunity to look at some AUX funding, which will look to try and introduce even more charging points in more of our car parks. So we're working with Devon County, and we recognise that we perhaps need to look at pulling together an electric charging strategy, and that's a piece of work that we will be carrying out shortly.
Members of the executive and South Hams members, I am going to close down this debate now, because the reference to electric charging points in this paper is only so that they are included in the off-street parking places orders, so that in future, when they come along, they can be incorporated without any problems. That's as I understand it. Councillor Baldry, could you confirm that that is correct?
Yes, that is why it's in the paper. Yes, Leader.
Well, in that case, I'm going to close down this debate, because it's not directly the debate we're having on when and where electric charging points should go is not directly part of this paper. But what we will undertake to do is to bring back the paper to you as soon as possible in the new year. And I ask you, Councillor Baldry and Mrs. Widdicombe, if you could look into that, please. Right, so with that, I'm afraid that Councillor O'Callaghan, Councillor Foss, Councillor Birch, I am not taking your comments at this time, because I don't think that they are directly related to this paper if they are about electric charging points. The point of having that line in the paper was only for the convenience of the order, not to discuss exactly when and where charging points are going to go in. Councillor Bastone, you wanted to come back?
Well, I just feel that we should let our members have a say on it, because the feelings are strong.
I think that is correct, but I think it's for another time, Councillor Bastone, because we've got quite a lot of business to transact this morning, and I don't want to be too distracted from the main thrust of things. So I'm afraid I'm going to carry on. Now, Councillor Baldry.
I was just going to say, if members want to direct their questions to me, I will ensure that they get answered.
That's very kind of you. Thank you very much. I think that's a good way out of this one. So we've had the recommendations moved and seconded. Are we all in agreement with the recommendations in this paper?
Agreed.
Agreed. Right. Thank
Carrie,
you very
thank you,
much. We'll now move on to the next paper, which is the parking permit reviews. Councillor Baldry, over to you again, please.
Thank you, Councillor Pearce. The purpose, I'm going to start by congratulating Emma Widdicombe and other members of the team. What we have produced here, I think, is a very neat solution to what is a very difficult problem of balancing the number of parking permits issued with the need to provide spaces for people coming for the hour or half day of the day to our car parks. So I congratulate the team on what they have produced, which I think is a very sensible, almost scientific solution to the problem, because I think that we need a clearer, transparent system to enable residents to see what they are paying for and the discount they get when they are purchasing the problems. As I've said, there is a balance to be struck in every town, and to provide spaces for people to park, for work, or to go and use local facilities, but also to make those spaces available for people coming to our towns. So that's my introduction, Leader. I shall come back later if there is a debate. Thank you.
Thank you. Members of the executive, do you have any questions? I see that Councillor Bastone's got his hand up. Councillor Bastone.
Yes, I support the recommendation, but I want to put on record that there are some car parks that the allocation of permits is unfair, in as much as sometimes they are given to second homes, and if you go through some of the car parks in the South Hams, you will find they are filled with cars from second homes or holiday homes, and I just feel that there needs to be a balance taken as to who these permits are issued to. I don't want to get parochial, because I could easily go on about Mayor's Avenue car park, but I have an understanding that we will undertake a further review in the new year with regard to the allocation of permits. And I'll leave it there, Chairman. I just wanted to put it on record that that's my understanding.
Yes. Thank you, Councillor Bastone. Councillor Baldry, do you want to comment on that?
Well, I will just say we have taken, when we devised this scheme, we took the view that it would be very unpopular and might cause controversy if we took permits away from existing permit holders. And that's why we have the variation in the scheme for Salcombe and for Dartmouth, to ensure that existing permit holders did not lose their permits. Local members from Dartmouth have made these representations to say that they would like a review to possibly reduce after that review the number of permits already in existence for Dartmouth. And that, as Councillor Bastone has said, is something we have agreed to go into early in the new year and hopefully come to a decision before the holiday season.
Thank you for that, Councillor Baldry.
Thank you. Any more questions from the executive? Now, are there any questions from other members? And I do state, I mean questions, not comments, please. So if you've got a question,
Councillor Brazil's first.
Brazil, you were first in the box.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, I've got 3 questions. The first is I'm slightly confused as to why we've arrived at this situation with the permits, because I would have thought this needed to go through the budget process before anything's decided on this. That'd be my first question. Shouldn't this have gone through the budget process? The other thing is, I noticed in the report that it talks about a possible saving in respect of our carbon reduction. I wonder if somebody could explain to me how somebody living in a rural village is going to do that. And thirdly, I'd like to ask, what's the cost of charging for officers parking at Fullerton House, please?
Councillor Baldry, would you like to attempt to answer those? If you want help, let us know.
On the first on the process, this is primarily an exercise, not in raising money. It is an exercise in order to make more spaces available in our car parks across the South Hams during the period they have been overflowing, and that is why it is coming through this route rather than the budget process. I have enormous sympathy on the question of people living in rural villages with lousy or non-existent bus services and how we can expect them not to use their cars. We were just, it's not part of this paper. It is the hope that people not living necessarily in isolated rural villages on the edge of the sea, a long way from a public bus service, is hope that people will use park and ride and other means rather than driving their cars into our main town and village centres. On the question of Fullerton House, yes, I will change Hatch leader to be from being an executive member to leader of the opposition. Yes, I do think we should be charging for Fullerton House car park, but that is not part of this paper, and that is a different piece of work.
Thank you, Councillor Baldry. So the next one I have in the chat box, Councillor O'Callaghan, could you ask your question, but not comments, please?
Thank you. Yeah, my question is, bearing in mind that a lot of people in Kingsbridge, which is obviously my ward, don't have parking spaces and do have to purchase a permit. Is the executive member happy to attend what I think is likely to happen? It's likely to be a public meeting called about this. There's likely to be a lot of concern, which is indicated by the comments which have been received. And a lot of people don't actually make comments on things like this, but I think the flavour of the comments indicates that other people are likely to agree with those comments rather than the reverse, which I think is suggested, which I don't think is right. Anyway, is the executive member happy to attend a public meeting, which is likely to be called, I would suggest, and to respond to any concerns which may well be voiced in that public meeting by implementing some sort of compromise, having listened to what people have said, because I think people are particularly unhappy when they don't feel they've been listened to.
Thank you, Councillor O'Callaghan. As long as the meeting is remote, I would be happy to attend such a meeting. I would not be willing to attend a meeting in a fixed accommodation place, but I would also expect to put forward the people need to be representative. Of course, we're here to represent the residents of Kingsbridge and our areas, but we're also here to represent the businesses who welcome the need for people to come to their towns and to find parking spaces when they get there. And there are two sides to it. I suspect at such a meeting it will be a very one-sided debate, and I would have to take account of the other side as well, the people who are going to benefit from these changes. And can I just add, and it will come perhaps later, I think what we are proposing to charge are very reasonable charges for our permits and compare very, very favourably with what is charged elsewhere. But the straight answer to your question about a meeting, yes, I am willing to come.
Thank you.
Can I add something to that, Councillor Baldry? Mrs. Widdicombe has done extensive research into the comments received at the time of the consultation and has supplied some very useful graphs. And the one to look at, really, I think you should look at, is the percentage of objections to the number of permit holders, which is on page 47 of the agenda. And you will see, as a proportion of permit holders, that the responses in Kingsbridge were one of the lowest in the towns. So lower than Modbury, lower than Dartmouth, and lower than Salcombe.
That doesn't necessarily mean anything, though, does it?
Well, I think it means that there was an opportunity to comment, and that is the result of the consultation. Councillor Baldry, do you want to add anything to that? I see you're...
No, just to laugh at the comment, that doesn't mean anything. What is the point of a consultation if the responses that come in don't mean anything?
Because people often don't comment on these things, witness past consultations. It doesn't mean they don't feel strongly.
I'm not going to fall out, Councillor Callaghan. Are these same people then going to turn up mob-handed for this meeting you're proposing?
I'll leave it there. Comment later.
Thank you. We've got Councillor Long has asked a comment in the box.
Thank you, Chairman. I'd just like to sort of back up what Councillor Bastow said. There are obviously sort of questions in Saltham about parking permits and things like that, and the number of permit holders, second homes, holiday homes. They are issues, but I'd like to say that you know, I welcome this work. I welcome the consultation. I think all the comments that have come in are valuable from everybody, you know, and whatever they've said to give us a view which we haven't had before. And I think it gives us, you know, something to work on. And I think, like lots of people, when you look at Salcombe, it's not just the permit issue that needs to be dealt with, but the whole issue of the number of parking places where permits are held. And I know this is a matter that will be discussed at some point to look at sort of rationalising the parking situation in Salcombe by looking at potentially increasing parking places, but also where, you know, permits can be used. And I think that's a sort of general issue in Salcombe, but also elsewhere in the South Hams. But I do welcome this report as being useful and giving us a basis to work on going forward. Thank you, Chairman.
Sorry, I've been distracted and reminded that we are on questions, not comments, but thank you for your comment, Councillor Long. We didn't have any more questions coming up, so I'm now going to move over to Councillor Baldry. Could you propose the recommendations, because we don't seem to have any more questions coming in?
I propose the recommendations as on the paper.
Seconded, Chairman.
Thank you. Right, now, members of the executive, do you have any comments to make? I'm sorry that I got out of step there. That was my fault.
Leader.
Yes. Councillor Hawkins.
Can I thank Emma for all her hard work and effort in this? It's anything to do with parking, you're going to upset somebody. You're certainly not going to please everybody. And I think Emma has done a very good job of this year, and I thank her very much for that. I drive around the South Hams occasionally. I went to Salcombe with some friends in the summer, well, towards the end of the summer. I think it was October, and I was amazed at the time we couldn't park, and the boats for the harbour had already started to be taken out, and one of the large car parks had been closed, and there was a considerable amount of cars trying to find spaces, and I think the majority of us all left the town and didn't spend any money there. Would it not be better for the Harbour Authority to close that at a later stage in the year, so that the economy of Salcombe can actually benefit better? But just the main comment was to thank Emma for all her hard work.
Councillor Hawkins, I can answer that one as a Salcombe member. I'm afraid that the Harbour Authority have a schedule for getting boats out of the water, and they all have to be out by a certain date. And the reason for that is that they then have a huge amount of work to do on inspecting and securing the moorings over the winter. And that's the reason that they have to get them out when they do. It takes a lot of time to get all the boats out of the water. Councillor Hopwood.
Thank you, Leader. I have had my notes on page 47 for most of this meeting, which is the graph, the percentages you referred to earlier of responses to the consultation, and I'm really good. It's really good news that in 3.10 you have listened in particular to Slapton, Torcross and Bigbury, because they were the highest percentages of responses, and you've listened to their responses. You've gone back to them. With regards to the others, the responses were so low. And I think we always look at responses to, oh, the rest are just too busy to respond, or never respond to anything, or don't care. Well, actually, no, one of the reasons that people don't respond is that they're happy with what's going ahead. So I don't always take it that those that don't respond don't have time or never respond. I take it actually that they're content with what's being proposed, because you're talking of money. So if they were discontent, I am sure that they would find the time to respond to the consultation. Thank you.
Thank you. And besides which, I feel that it's too late after the event to get people together to talk about it, because the deal is done. The time would have been at the time of the consultation. Thank you, Councillor Hopwood. Do I have any more comments from the executive? Because if not, I'm going to move over to members. But Councillor Brazil, is this on a different subject from the question you asked, or are we on the same beat?
Well, it's comments about the paper in general, so I mean, really, it's just a comment about the whole paper.
Well, would you like to comment then?
Yes, please. Yes, thank you. You won't be surprised to hear that I'm totally opposed to this. You know, this was brought about because of problems in Dartmouth and Salcombe. But what I find is that the residents in some of my area are now going to see an increase in over 200% in their cost of parking, car parking permits, when there wasn't a problem there. The idea that this isn't a revenue raising exercise, I think, is risible. I'd like to, in fact, I should have asked, how much is this going to raise? These are residents who don't have a car as a luxury. It's an absolute necessity. If you live in rural areas, you need to have a car. There is little or no public transport. So you are forcing these people to pay. In some cases, you see that the cost of a permit will go up from £140 to over £300, or for 6 months, £85 to £209. And I just think it's desperately unfair to hike up these prices when it's totally not reasonable. And the reason why you've had such a high response from the seaside areas is because we do have quite high charges, which are related to the summer charges for these areas. But of course, for most of the year, they're absolutely empty or near empty. And I just think that you've used too blunt an instrument to try and achieve what you're trying to achieve, and that is to provide extra car parking spaces for Dartmouth and Salcombe, which I think you failed to do. So I think that you may have started off with good intentions, but all this has turned out to be is a revenue raising exercise by the council, disguised as some way of increasing car turnover in our market towns. And obviously, I totally agree with the market towns. Just a slight comment with Councillor Hawkins. I don't know if the park and ride was open in Salcombe at the time when he went there. But that's the sort of thing that I think that we should be expanding on. Park and rides, making them more feasible for members of the public, easier for members of the public to use, rather than punishing our local residents. Thank you.
Councillor Brazil, these permits have not been reviewed for a number of years, and it is important that in some way they relate to the general car parking charges in the district. Now, it is not true that this review was undertaken to sort out Dartmouth and Salcombe, because as far as I can see, it hasn't changed anything to do with the number of permits in Dartmouth and Salcombe from before when this review started. We have listened to the people at Slapton, Torcross and Bigbury, because I agree that with the car parking charges, it was hard, and we're now basing it on much more on the winter charges, which is a more equitable way of doing it for local residents, or we have come to other solutions. But the relationship between car parking prices or permit prices and general car parking prices as a principle is now established. Councillor Baldry, do you want to add anything to that?
No, I'm going to let one of the officers talk on the alleged 200% increase, but what you have said is absolutely right, Leader. We were trying to establish something more transparent and more obvious about the way in which we approach the pricing system for permits. And we wanted to link the pay and display parking charges, normal charges, to permit prices. It is not being done. It has been done to have a consistent approach across the district, while reflecting that we have listened to the problems which people in Torcross and Bigbury and Modbury may have. I'll let someone else come in on the 200% increase, but can I just return to the Salcombe and Dartmouth problem? This has not done anything at the moment, other than over time, as permits are not reissued, we will have fewer issued in those places. But I perhaps, and I'll take the blame, was a little bit diffident in coming in with a proposal that we would reduce the number of permits in Dartmouth and in Salcombe. I thought the opposition would be too enormous for taking away something which people already had. We have now had the door open by members, so thank you very much to Councillor Long, as well as the two executive members from Dartmouth, that we will look into that, and it may, at the end of our review, mean that there are fewer permits issued to people existing people who have them, and there will be an uproar, but we will do it as best we can. But someone might want to comment on the 200% increase.
Mrs. Widdicombe, can you comment on that?
So yeah, the charges are obviously, we based it on looking at the all-day rate, and we had to have some sort of formula to do that. And then it's not a 200% increase on some of the permits. Yes, they do increase significantly on some of them in the first year, but that's being based on the all-day price being used 5 days a week at 20% of that price.
Thank you. Right.
Chairman, can I come back, please, on that? That's just patently not true. Can Miss Widdicombe explain to me how an increase from £140 for somebody parking at Torcross, this is from your own paper, someone, so where is it? Let me go here. Torcross, £140 for a 12-month permit, and that is going to be raised to £316.80. How is that not over a 200% increase?
Mrs. Widdicombe, can you answer that one? I'm not quite sure where these figures are.
I'm not finding.
Okay.
Okay, well, you want to go to page 53, Slapton and Torcross. Current price 140, by March 2022 £316.80.
So that's 100. Yes, that's 120% increase.
100? No, that's twice. Well, okay. Well, I mean, you can see that is more than double what they pay at the moment.
Are you on page 52, did you say?
53.
53.
I mean, I said maybe I've got the percentage. I mean, I see that as more than double what they pay at the moment. It goes from 140 to 316.80.
I'm sorry, on page 53, I don't have any prices. I have consultation responses.
Okay. Well, don't worry. Look. I'm just saying that take the percentages out of it. But if members feel that for somebody who has a car parking permit at Tor Cross, that it goes from £140 to £360.80, if that's acceptable, then I just think that's unacceptable for people who cannot choose to use any other form of transport other than a car.
Councillor Brazil, can I suggest, I suggest you may be looking at page 51, but I'm not certain. So can I suggest you take this up with Councillor Baldry and officers after this meeting, please?
Thank you. Yeah, I will do, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. Right. Councillor O'Callaghan, could I have your comment, please?
Thank you very much. Yes, I'd like to support what Julian said. I'd first of all like to say I think it's dangerous to assume people are content when they don't reply, because people don't tend to reply to these things. And it was before I came on the council, but do I not recall that when you were going to link up more closely with West Devon some time ago, hardly anyone replied, and that was taken as a sign that everyone was happy about it, and that didn't end too well, did it? So I'd just like to make that point. Going on to parking permits, it was a 12% response, I believe, in Kingsbridge, which I actually think is quite high, because I don't believe people tend to respond to these things. I'd like to say this is a terrible time to do this in the middle of a pandemic, when people are losing their jobs right, left and centre. The food bank is the only thing thriving around here at the moment, and that it is not a good time, to say the least, to be doing this. I find it hard to believe we're so cloth-eared. People are not happy. All the comments I looked at down in my ward pretty much were not happy, and that's a reflection of what I believe people feel. That's the way to look at it, I think. And if we're concerned with the reputation of this council, which we often are, then the reputation is not going to be improved by doing this sort of thing. It's going to be trashed, in fact. So I think residents feel that they're being fleeced and being used. And there's constant comments about visitors are being prioritised at the expense of residents. And I think we should listen to that. Julian was talking about people not, having to use their car. In Kingsbridge, for example, people who live particularly in the centre need to have permits. They don't have much choice, and a lot of them do not have much money. Their businesses are under threat because they don't have parking at home, which maybe people are more likely to outside of towns. Essentially, whether we like it or not, people do rely on their cars down here. And they're being asked to pay an extra, 20% by March or April next year, which is very soon, and then another 20% a year later. And we're told that by the end of next year, the economy is going to be really, really struggling. And, even in a year's time, it's all going to come out in the wash next year. And we're merrily asking people to pay another 20% and then, another 20% on top of that, just for good measure. And I don't think it's right. And I know that, the town council here has called for a public meeting about this, and I think that's likely to happen. So I just wanted to flag it up in the spirit of being helpful and not divisive. And that's really what I wanted to say. And I think we should be looking to listen to people, engage with people, and institute some sort of compromise and not be defensive, because it doesn't look good.
Councillor O'Callaghan, I'm not being defensive, but why didn't you come to us with these comments while the consultation was on?
I did.
Who did you speak to?
The executive member.
Councillor Baldry, can you respond to that, please?
Yeah, Councillor O'Callaghan and others spoke to me, and there are other members here who spoke to me during it, but it was a formal consultation, and you don't get the points that Councillor O'Callaghan and others have made about the economy, no one can dispute. But this is a balance. We are not going in directly to police residents, as she has said. We're trying to present a transparent and open system for permits, and it is long overdue, in my opinion, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Baldry. Councillor Bastow.
Yeah, the reason I seconded Councillor Baldry's proposal was that we've actually come up with a fair and equitable system of charging for permits. It was a mishmash previously, and now it's based on the actual car parking charges for that car park. This is the fairest way to do it.
Thank you. Councillor Hopwood.
Thank you, Chairman. Can you just tell me when we last had a parking charges increase, please, for permits?
I shall have to defer to Mrs. Widdicombe for that, because and I'm sure she can give us an answer. Probably says in the paper, does it, somewhere?
I couldn't see it.
No, I don't recall it saying in the paper.
No.
But...
Well, if I can help out while we're looking up the figures, this came to a previous executive in the previous council, and they backed off from tackling the problem. And it was the proposals in the previous council, so that's at least 3 years ago, were withdrawn and never taken forward because there was they backed up from actually. But we have moved on from there, and I am going to say, and I'm getting boring saying it, we have come up with a neat solution, in my opinion, of relating hourly charges to the permit prices.
Councillor Baldry, I think you're absolutely right, and I know that in discussions the executive have had, this has always been our view that there should be a transparent system which is much more related to car parking charges in general, and it's also that this would have been introduced much earlier had it not been for the pandemic, but we can't go off putting it off indefinitely. Councillor Hopwood, is your hand still up? Do you want to say something else, or is it just not taken?
I want to say so. I was wondering if Mrs. Widdicombe had an answer to my question yet.
Yes. Can you tell us when the last review of car parking permit?
I was trying to look back through my notes, but I believe it was 2017, 2018.
Well, that was the one that failed, I think. That was the one that was never taken forward. It was mooted.
There was one when we set up the virtual permit system, and that's when we reviewed it. But I can come back to you with the exact date.
But we did. My recollection, and it is only a recollection, is that we didn't actually change the charging then. We reviewed the system rather than actually increasing charges.
And I think
they weren't increased.
They weren't increased, no. And they haven't. My point is, they haven't been increased for a long time, and they were due an overhaul. There's never a right time to put parking charges up or increase parking permits, but you can't forever put the inevitable off, which is that they have to at some point be equitable a lot across the board. And I think this is a really good paper. It sorted out a problem, which was they were a mismatch. So nothing was done merrily. I think it's been done in a fair way. I do agree that maybe the one that Councillor Brazil was referring to is unfortunate, and that maybe needs to be looked at for the future. But I was also wondering, Kingsbridge Town Council aren't helping by calling a public meeting after the horse has bolted, and I don't see the point in having one, because we're voting on this today, so nothing can be changed. And I was wondering if Kingsbridge Town Council had actually responded to the consultation.
Yes, they did.
Yes. You can't have a meeting until they know what's being proposed. Sorry to butt in.
You know what's being proposed.
Well, what was being proposed, there was a proposal to make the system more equitable. Mrs. Widdicombe, can you remind us exactly what was the basis of the consultation, please?
So the consultation was based on those prices that we've advertised under this formula. So it was the previous paper that we took, that was what was consulted on. So the prices that are included in this paper with the formula that we have come up with.
Thank you. And as a result of that, did you alter the ones at Slapton, Torcross and Bigbury?
Yes, we've subject to the public consultation, then we amended the prices for the Slapton and the Bigbury permits.
And Torcross, was that also just?
Yes, yes.
Thank you. Right, so Councillor Callaghan, I just wanted confirmation that what was in the consultation is exactly what was in the paper. So in other words, you did know what was being consulted on and you did know what the proposal was. So I think Councillor Baldry is right that to an extent, if Kingsbridge Town Council are only wanting a public meeting now, the stable door is closed and the horse has bolted. But I think that's a slightly pejorative way of putting it, because I do think that this consultation has been carried out as it should have been to the letter. And I think the system that Mrs. Widdicombe came up with was really equitable and that we have listened. And you can respond, yes.
Thank you. Just to say that I think the way round is that they were waiting to see whether their comments had been taken on board, is the way round that it is, and whether anything, would have been amended from what was suggested, but it looks like it hasn't been. So hence, that would be their response. So that's the way round it is.
Well, I do think that Mrs. Widdicombe in this paper has given a huge amount of information and shown why the response to the consultation is as it is, and why we have listened to some people but not changed the general principle of how we're proceeding for other people. Councillor Baldry, would you like to comment on that too?
Yeah, I have said I'm always willing to go and listen to people and their complaints. I am willing to attend such a meeting, I have said, but what you're saying is absolutely correct. People's views were taken into account, and it is evidenced by the variations which we have discussed in the paper compared with the original proposals.
Thank you. Councillor Hawkins, I think one final comment.
Well, we've been talking about this for some considerable amount of time over the last few months. I find that Kingsbridge Town Council are only calling a meeting after we've voted on this to be rather sad, because they really should have had that meeting before this meeting. And I know what Councillor Callaghan is saying, but this process has been quite long and quite protracted, and we really need to move forward with this. There is never a good time to put any parking charges up. We all know that. And she says that the businesses are struggling. Yes, I know that. But in Dartmouth and Salcombe, this will actually assist the businesses, because we'll be able to have less permits in the end for our towns. But I'm sure that Keith or Councillor Baldry will listen to that meeting and come back to this executive on that conclusion.
Right.
Councillor Baldry, do you want to respond?
Yeah, can I make 2 points in conclusion? I think these are my concluding remarks. There's been a lot of negative discussion here today, but I think I am proud to be associated with this paper and these proposals, and I do congratulate Emma and Laura and Chris Brooke on producing this excellent paper with a contribution, if I may say so, from the Chief Executive. And what has come out is a reaction and something of which we ought to be proud. And just as a final note, draw everyone's attention, because I think it is neglected, to the residence permits, which are of great value to people and which are available for use from 3 p.m. till 10 a.m. daily. It is a much wider timescale than most authorities provide, and I think those permits are enormous value to a lot of people, where they can park using their residence permit from 3 o'clock in the afternoon until 10 o'clock the next morning. I'm going to support the paper. I think it is very good, and I am going to ask you, Leader, now to take the vote, please.
I do have one final comment from Richard Foss. Councillor Foss, would you like to come in, please?
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. Yeah, the increase at Slapton, who I represent as a district councillor, is huge. But if I remember right, then I'm going to have to ask Mrs. Widdicombe this. I think Slapton Parish Council actually agreed these figures. I'm pretty sure in the back of my mind that they did, even though they are a very big increase, and that does actually, seeing it on the face of it there, it is huge. But it'd be nice to know how many years ago that was last set. That would make a lot of difference on my opinion on it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Foss, for your contribution. Thank you, Councillor Callaghan. I'm told that the increase in Kingsbridge is about 5%. So perhaps you'd like to take that away to your public meeting and ask them whether that's reasonable. The general car parking charges have been increased by 4%. This is 5%. So perhaps you'd like to mull on that before you call the public meeting. Now, I've got Councillor Sweet now who wants to comment. Councillor Sweet, is this directly related to, because the prices in Totnes have actually reduced?
Yes, thank you. I'm just having trouble. Yes, I'm having trouble keeping the papers up actually because I'm just on my Surface Go. Can I just ask a question? Is there a cap on the number of permits that a household can apply for?
Councillor Baldry, can you answer that question? And if not, can Mrs. Widdicombe?
Mrs. Widdicombe can answer it, although it's not directly related to the paper. But yes,
no, it certainly isn't. But as we've got it and it's fairly quick, let's answer the question.
No, there isn't a cap.
There isn't a cap, right? Thank you very much. Okay, so I think now we should pass to the vote. We seem to have debated this fairly exhaustively. Members of the executive, are you in favour with the recommendation at the top of this paper?
Agreed. Yes, in favour.
Agreed?
Agreed.
Right. Thank you. We're all agreed on that. So
Thank
we'll
you,
move on to the next item, which is the draft recovery and renewal plan. And again, this is on a separate paper, so we need to move over to that. Right. I feel I hardly need to introduce this paper. There have been a few updates to the action plan, and we now have the results of the two working groups, the communities, the localities and communities task and finish group, and the consultation and engagement task and finish group attached to it. There will be a finalisation of the plan in line with the approach outlined in the report, and this will be presented to Council on the 17th of December. So really, I see this more or less as a polishing of the papers, ready to send them on to Council. Now, members of the executive, do you have any questions?
No.
No.
No. Are there any questions from other members on this?
Councillor Birch, Chair.
Councillor Birch.
Okay, thank you. I'd like to refer to item 111 on the recovery management plan at Appendix A, and I'll read it out. It's quite short, and it says 1.11. Explore opportunities to invest in our high streets by buying empty premises and letting with a rent-free period, stroke other incentives to attract businesses into the area. My question is this: will this be an item that is given priority, bearing in mind the state or the threat being posed to our high streets throughout the district? And I'm just asking whether or not this could be given a high priority in implementing the plan.
Councillor Birch, I can reply to that. Currently, our placemaking officer, Sarah Gibson, new officer, very proactive, is looking into the feasibility of your suggestion, because I believe this was your suggestion that you made and one of the contributions you made to this action plan. And I anticipate that she will have a fuller answer for you by the time of the council meeting in December. Is that a sufficient reply at this stage for you?
Yes, thank you very much indeed. Thank you.
Right. Okay, good. Any other questions from the floor? Right, well, in that case, I'm going to move to the recommendations at the head of the paper, which I now propose. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Hopwood.
May I speak, Chairman? Sorry.
Yeah, sorry, you want to speak? Oh, okay. I'm sorry, I misunderstood you.
Sorry.
Yes.
I'm not sure if this is the right point to actually change the recommendation number 3.3.
Okay. You can do that in the debate. Shall we propose as they are, and you can propose an amendment in the debate.
Okay, thank you.
Right. So we've had the recommendations proposed and seconded. We'll now go into the debate, and I'll bring in Councillor Hopwood now. Councillor Sweet, could you take your hand down, please? You should be in the chat box, not with your hand up anyway. Right. Councillor Hopwood.
Thank you, Chairman. I would like to propose I've got something to say about the task and finish groups, but I'll propose an amendment to that recommendation at point 3 first, which is, just bear with me, which for the localities task and finish group, so I'll propose this recommendation first and then talk on that. That the officers assess the feasibility and cost of implementing the proposals and bring a report back to the executive for further consideration. The locality service has been in, oh, sorry, I need a proposer for that.
Seconded.
Thank you. Seconder. The locality service has been in operation for around 6 years now and has not gone through a significant review since its implementation. Could I thank the task and finish group for coming to the conclusions they did? The main change is providing a 7-day service during the periods as laid out in the recovery plan. This will mean that during the high seasons, the council will have a 7-day presence monitoring such things as waste not being in bins at tourist locations, which is unsightly, and educating whoever the person may be that when the bin is full, dumps their waste from their fun day beside the bin, as to persuade, they should be either fined or if they offer to take it home. But it's more about education first. Members will have a single point of contact, and in general, there will be more on-street presence. This is a positive outcome for the council, and I'm happy with the recommendation as it's proposed and seconded now. With regards to point 2 of the recommendation, with the consultation and engagement task and finish, I'd like to make another addition to the altered point 3 of the recommendation, please. And that is that officers use the framework developed by the task and finish group to develop and to present for adoption a consultation and engagement strategy to council on the 17th of December. Could I have a seconder for that one, please?
Seconded.
Thank you, Councillor Bastone. A task and finish group was set up in light of the positive relationship and communications this council built up during the pandemic. I thank the task and finish group for their work and thank them for the conclusions they came to. The community engagement strategy, as set out starting on page 29, is a short, precise document, easy to read and meaningful. It will be helpful moving forward to have an adopted strategy outlining how we communicate and consult. The only part that I would like taking out of the strategy is the proverb. If you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go ahead. Although I think it's a great saying, I don't think it's for the council to have this in a strategy, because it could set a precedent moving forward, and groups in future may be thinking more about a proverb to put in their strategy than the actual strategy itself. So I would like to propose that we take that out. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you. Is that You've got a seconder for that as well, have you?
Seconded.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Bastone. Now, does Mr. White have those words? Have you sent them to him?
No.
Oh dear.
I will do. I have. Well, yes. Hang on. Let me look at my email.
Mr. White, can you cope?
I'm not sure, Chairman.
I've had
a go at I've had a go at revised 3 and 4, Chair. I mean, I don't know if Councillor Hopwood's happy with that wording. It's in red font.
Yes, thank you.
Just bear with me. It's really hard going between several different things and screens. I'm still getting used to it.
Yeah.
As we all are. I don't know now, because as I said it, I haven't, because as I said it, I got rid of the email. If you can speak to Mr. Powell, he has the wording, because we did it between us.
Okay, thank you.
Oh, right, okay. Well, look.
Let me just look at the screen. Sorry.
Look at the screen.
Yeah.
Mr. Powell's got his hand up, so do you want to come in?
Yeah.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, they've been forwarded to Mr. White, so he's got a copy of them now, and he can get them verbatim put onto the screen while we debate. Thank you.
Okay, well, while we're debating it, we'll get those up then. Thank you.
They're pretty close.
Councillor Baldry, you wanted to come
in. Comments or questions are we in? Sorry, I'm confused.
At the moment, we are
Can I help at that point, Chair?
debating the amendment. So we're debating the amendment, Councillor Baldry. Do you want to do that, or?
Well, let me do it now, and you can slap me down if I've got it wrong. Can Councillor Hopwood or Mr. Powell remind me what we are proposing for localities? She mentioned it was going to be in the high season. What do we mean by high season? When are they going to be out and about? And I'm struggling to find it. I'm sure it's one of these 3 screens, but the question is localities. When are we proposing they appear?
So, if I may, Leader, it's Easter or the 1st of April, whichever is the earliest, to the 30th of September, and October half-term school holiday week. It's 4.15 in the papers on page 4.
I will want to comment on that, Leader, because I'm not happy with that.
Fine, Councillor Baldry. Would you like to comment on it now, because we are debating the amendment?
Yeah, there are 2 points which I actually made at the Overview and Scrutiny Committee before I was told I was talking too much. I think you've got to include February half-term week in that. We have problems with the car parks, and I think you've got to not just have October half-term, you've got to have the February half-term. And the other thing that worries me, can we put something in there? If members of the public get hold of that, they will think we won't have any localities officers out in a lovely sunny November day or a March day between February and Easter. I think the last thing we want the public to think, sorry, not the public, the bad guys in the public to think that they can get away without localities being out and about on a day which is probably a day when they wish to go to the beach, as I say, on a sunny March day. But I would definitely like February half-term included.
I think that's a fair point, but it was concluded that actually, because there's just not so much litter at that time of year, but it's something that the Task and Finish group did consider, and we were just, we had to find a way of doing having a 7-day service for the most prominent times of the year, and we've got to have it written down somewhere, so it's a little bit difficult.
But if we have a problem, sorry, coming back, Leader, if we have a problem at a particular car park where the public turn up and start abusing the facility and dropping their litter, I would like us to be able to react by sending out a localities team, even if it's outside those given periods.
Well, there will be, sorry if I can come back, there will be a localities team, even outside those periods. It's just that there will still be a team somewhere, but obviously there won't be so prompt at the weekends. There won't be.
Well, Well, it's like a lot of things. Sorry, Councillor Hobwood, you assume the public are well behaved, and I have to tell you that if the sun comes out in March, they will be some people will be just as badly behaved as they will be in October half term.
Well, whilst I understand that, sorry, Leader, just for the last time to come back, we don't have a bottomless pit of money, and so we're doing the best we can, and I think this is a really good compromise.
Councillor Baudry, can I make a suggestion?
Mm-hmm.
That we go with this new revised system for next year to see how it works. Now, if what you're saying proves to be a problem, then I would be happy to look at a revision of the system. But I think given the costings that are going to be involved, and the fact that we know that there are some times when it is absolutely desperate that we need help, and other times where it is less obvious. And I have to say that whilst in the past we have had a lot of footfall and some litter in February and March, it doesn't come to mind as being one of the real problem times of the year. And on that basis, I think if you're agreeable, we move forward on this basis now, but take stock of it at the end of next high season.
One last comment, if I may, and it's on the general paper. I've failed to do what I should have done, which is congratulate the localities team on the way in which they reacted last summer when we had an influx of antisocial people into our beaches and beach car parks. So that I think they reacted magnificently, and as long as they are prepared to do that again, I'm happy with what you are suggesting. But when you say historically doesn't apply anymore. We didn't have the level of staycations in the past that we have at the moment, unfortunately.
Yeah, and I think it's always difficult for us to read the crystal balls, but if the vaccination works and life returns to normal, we may not see the same behaviour next summer that we saw this summer. Let's hope not. But meanwhile, I join you in thanking the localities officers for the sterling work they did in the summer under very difficult circumstances. Councillor Hawkins.
Thank you, Leader. In my view, the localities team, which was introduced some 6 years ago, was and is a big success of this council. And I know that whenever I contact them, I normally get a response back within a couple of hours. And I know that the work or the action I've requested is normally put in place very quickly. I'll comment on Councillor Baldry's view on how well they worked last year. Last year was a very busy season, as we all know. I do question the leader's view that next year with a vaccine won't be quite as busy, because I think next year will actually probably be busier, because once they've actually visited our part of the world, those people will probably stay with us and not risk going abroad. I also feel that February should be considered, because if it's a beautiful sunny week, which it can be, we could be inundated. So I think that should be considered. And the last comment is, if I was in Dartmouth, Kingsbridge on bank holiday Sunday in August, how many locality officers would there actually be for us to call on?
Well, if I can come back, Chairman, Leader.
Yes, please do.
Sorry.
Yeah.
The first bit, I think we've answered by saying that if it proves a problem, there'll be a review. The second bit is localities officers are going to be asked to work 5 weekends out of the 28 weeks of the summer. The actual workings, this is the next step to actually working out who does what, when, and how many there will be. So once, as it says in the recommendation, then we'll go forward and formulate the plan.
Thank you, Councillor Hopwood. Do I have any more comments from members of the executive? Because if not, I've got a couple of people from the floor who want to speak. And Councillor Birch, I think you're first.
Yes, thank you. First of all, just for consistency on the proposed amendment at item 3, it should read the localities and communities task and finish group. It's referred to as that in the report, and I think the proposed amendment should be consistent with the report. And I see that Daryl has already amended that, so presumably that will not create a problem. Secondly, it says towards the end of the part of the proposed amendment, to a future executive meeting. Wouldn't it be better to put a time limit on that and refer to the next executive meeting, bearing in mind that if my memory serves me correctly, that's in January, and that should provide sufficient time. In other words, it be presented to the next executive meeting rather than a future executive meeting. My third point is that as far as item 4 and the proposed amendment, I do hope that if this is passed, that not at full council on the 17th of December, that the strategy can be used for the consultation and engagement on the housing strategy, which is to come on your agenda. It would be a helpful way of breaking the policy in by seeking to implement it on the housing strategy. And finally, I think both the reports, the localities and communities, and the consultation engagement, the works of the 2 task and finish groups, together with the contribution from the overview and scrutiny members, I think this provides a good method of working that hopefully we'll use more in the future in developing council policy. It's worked well, and hopefully we can use it on other in the future for other policy development areas. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Birch. Now, to the first question, we will leave it as a future executive meeting. I take your point, and actually I think we do need the details, because we shall need the details for the budget and we shall need the details for implementing it. But because of everything that is going on in the council at the moment, I would prefer to leave it as a future executive meeting, although understood that we need it as soon as possible. But I really don't want to put on officers any more than I have to put on them at the moment. And it is possible that it could come back to the February executive meeting as well as the January one.
Leader, may I comment on that, please?
Yes, you may. Yes, Councillor.
The reason it's saying future executive meeting is because Mrs. Moody has to carry out a consultation with all the staff, because their their terms and conditions of employment are going to change. So we have to wait for that to finish before it can be come to an executive meeting. So that's why it's not precise yet.
Thank you.
But it's in our interest to get it back to executive at the first opportunity.
Thank you very much, Councillor Hopwood. That's helpful. And as to the second one, it's my understanding that the housing strategy needs to go out to consultation straight away in order to meet the deadlines for it being adopted in March. And so I'm not sure that we will have the consultation engagement strategy in place by then. Yes, Councillor Birch, I agree with you that it has been very useful having your task and finish groups doing bits of policy work for us, and we're grateful for that. And in principle, I don't disagree with what you say. But at the moment, with the pandemic as it is at the moment, and not knowing what's going to happen yet in the new year, I think our officers are so stretched that actually resourcing any further working groups at this point is probably on hold, though I acknowledge and thank you for your offer of help. So I hope that's sufficient for you at the moment. Do you want to come back on that at all?
No, thank you very much indeed. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And Councillor Foss.
Yeah, thank you, Leader. As you can imagine, I am more than pleased to see this paper. after the August that you and I and Councillor Baldry had with the problems we had with all the visitors we had down here. This is fantastic news. I never did quite understand why we sort of operated on a 5-day a week when we got this big holiday industry that operates on 7 days a week. I do, however, have a lot of sympathy with what Councillor Baldry is saying about February. I know we're limited probably on budgets and the rest of it, but I really do welcome what's happening. And I hope that we can manage the very difficult time we had last year. I think August, for you and I in particular, was very busy council work when normally we're trying to take it a bit easier. But Councillor Baldry does have a point. The sun comes out, they'll be down here, and also the fact that Councillor Hawkins made. I don't think we're going to see the numbers decrease for a few years now, because people are not going to climb on board an aircraft in a great big hurry, even with the vaccination and the rest. And having seen this wonderful part of the world, I think we're going to be dealing with a lot of people in the future. So this is great news. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Foss. Councillor Hopwood, do you want to come back on that one? Your hands up. No, it's gone down again. Okay. Right. Well, that seems to be the end of the debate. So,
sorry, yes, I did want to come back, but I
did want to come back.
Yes, sorry, I was coming. I'd just like to say, I would hate this whole paper to be focusing on the localities, because actually it's a draft recovery plan for the whole council. And if you go into Appendix A, there are so many things in here that are to do with our environment, our businesses, how we move forward. This recovery plan is almost for the framework for a new, what do you call it, where we have the 5 wheels, memory loss moment, strategy.
Corporate strategy.
Strategy, and I think this is an excellent starting point for something like that. There are things in here that we need to focus on to get our economy back up and running, to help our businesses, to help our environment, and to make the South Hams it is a superb place to make it better. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hopwood, and I think that is one of the intentions moving forward, that this should be the basis of just that. But let's wait to see how things pan out in the new year and whether we have the capacity to move forward with a new corporate strategy, because there's nothing I would like better. So thank you for that contribution. Members of the executive, you've got the, sorry, we didn't vote on the amendments. First of all, could we have your agreement?
Chair, before you do, Councillor Brazil was added to the comment box.
Right. Oh, Councillor Brazil, is this on the amendments or is this in general?
No, it wasn't on the amendments, but I was worried that you were going to vote on the whole thing without going to the whole.
No, can I just take a vote on the amendment, then we'll come back to you.
Yeah.
Okay. Members of the executive, are you in agreement with the amendments at 3 and 4?
Yes.
Yes, everybody agreed. Councillor Brazil, then please come back.
Yes, thank you very much, Chair. Yeah, I mean this plan has a lot of very good stuff in it, and I'm welcoming the fact that it's coming to us in the 17th. Obviously, the one thing it doesn't have, and John alluded to it when he was talking about 1.11. That was my idea, by the way, not John's. But anyway, that there are no timescales here. So whereas it's a great wish list, unless we have some kind of timescales to it, we will not know if we are achieving our goals or not. Because, and I particularly, with the business and economy, our businesses, some of our businesses are going to be are going to struggle massively. And they're going to need our immediate help. Nothing sort of in a year's time may well be too late. So I hope that when this comes back on the 17th, that we start putting in some timescales to it, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Brazil. Mr. Parle, can you take that away and do something about it, please? Is that all right for you for December?
Yes, Chair. Certainly. I mean, they will be broad indications on the basis of short, medium or long term. I think at this stage to try and put definitive dates on this amount of work is probably unrealistic, to be honest, Chair, but certainly I accept the point that we need to have an understanding of when we're going to look to deliver against these actions.
Okay, thank you. Well, in that case, could you give us some indication of what short, medium and long term mean?
Yes, I will do.
When it comes back. I'm not asking for that now.
No, certainly, Chair, we can do that.
All right, thank you very much. Okay, right, I think executive members, we can pass to the vote now. Is everybody in agreement with all the recommendations? We've had the amendments, so it's 1, 2 and 5 we're looking at now.
Agreed.
Agree.
Yes,
Agreed.
agreed. Thank you very much.
Carry. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. We'll move on to item 10, the housing strategy. We need to change papers again, and Councillor Bastone, I think this is your one.
Thank you, Chairman. Are you ready for me to proceed?
Absolutely, yes, please.
Right, we are pleased to introduce the joint housing strategy of the South Hams and West Devon councils, which sets out our housing priorities for the next 5 years. This strategy comes at a time of great uncertainty for our country following a year of restrictions and lockdowns as a result of the global coronavirus pandemic, a time when home took on a stronger meaning. As our areas start to emerge and recover from the pandemic, it is important that we build back better, revisit our priorities and make commitments to change. That's why we have called our strategy Better Homes, Better Lives. Under our themes of housing for place and housing for people, we have listed our key priorities for the next 5 years. And these are ensuring sustainable housing growth, promote balanced and sustainable communities, ensuring that homes support the health and well-being of the area, homes that support the health and well-being of our residents, make the best use of and improve quality of existing housing, and ensuring that people can access the support and advice they require and make best use of the data. We want to deliver on these key commitments to ensure all our residents, current and future, benefit from a strategy that makes the best of our beautiful natural environment, but also delivers for those who need it the most. Both our councils have declared a climate emergency and greener initiatives that deliver on carbon reduction, green energy and improving homes in a sustainable way are key aspects of the strategy that we are keen to deliver for our residents and communities. It goes without saying that the objectives of this strategy would not begin to be met without working in partnership with a great number of statutory and voluntary agencies. So we would like to extend our thanks to our partners for the part they have played in the outcomes for our area. We believe that through this strategy and its supporting delivery plans, we have made clear our ambition for the next 5 years and how we will meet our future challenges to ensure that both South Hams and West Devon continue to be in great places to live. Today, we are recommending to commence the public consultation with our residents, stakeholders and partners. The findings of this consultation will be incorporated into the final version of the strategy, which will come back to the executive and then to full council for anticipated formal adoption from April 2021. This will be accompanied by a delivery plan. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much, Councillor Bastone. Members of the executive, do you have any questions for Councillor Bastone?
Not at this stage.
I have Isabel Blake with me today in case there are any really technical ones.
Right, thank you very much, Councillor Bastone. So do we have any questions then from other members, if there are none from us? I see that Councillor Funnels found an errant apostrophe, but perhaps somebody can deal with that without me needing to bring him in on page 3. Councillor Brazil.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Yeah, very pleased to hear about a delivery plan. So we've got the strategy, but the delivery plan is equally, if not more important. I wonder at what stage we can have a view of that, given that if it's coming back to the executive on the 21st, is that going to be the first time that we actually see what the delivery plan is?
Councillor Bastone.
Can we pass that to Isabel, please?
Yes, of course. Yeah, I was going to do that.
Yes, good morning, members. Thank you for your question, Councillor Brazil. We are looking at that delivery plan. I think you're right. It's absolutely almost more important than the strategy itself, because it will demonstrate how we hope to get to how we hope to deliver on our priorities and commitments. We will be working on that during December and January. There are very tight timescales with this. So yes, it will be. The intention is for that to go back to exec as at the end of February or early March as that for review and comment.
Is there any way that it could be made available to members for comments? Could you circulate it for comments before it actually comes back to the executive? Will there be time to do that? It would be a way of other members having input if they wish to it, because I doubt there'll be time for it to actually go to overview and scrutiny or anything like that. And anyway, Councillor Brazil is not on overview and scrutiny, so.
Yes, we will make our best attempts to make that available as soon as we can. We're working on it in December and January. So as soon as we've got something, what we didn't want to do is to produce it now, because obviously adoption is some months away still, and we're still unsure of what that might look like in April, and that will be an annual delivery plan that members will get each year, and help to shape again in the same way that they've been so instrumental in shaping the strategy. It will come back to them each year to sign off on the achievements and set the priorities for the following year.
Right, thank you very much. Councillor Brazil, if we undertake to try and circulate this to members for any comments for you to send back to housing before it's actually published as a public document, would you be happy with that solution?
Yeah, thank you very much, Chair. I mean, I just, we know how things go, and it's very hard if it just comes as a published paper to get changes there.
Yeah, I take that on board, and I think that's a perfectly reasonable request.
Thank you.
But I think you will find that the annual work plan will be a totally reasonable document, and I'm sure will include 99% of the things you wish to see in it. But certainly for this first year, I'm happy that we should follow that procedure so that you can have a look at it.
Thank you.
Councillor Pannell.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I can't find it now, but I know there was reference to social housing as well as affordable housing, and I think a lot of people are feeling that we're not going to solve our housing problems on the scale that we have facing us both in the South Hams and nationally without increasing our amount of social housing. And I was pleased to see that there was some reference, I think, to social housing with or without partners. And I'm just wondering what emphasis and what priority will be the council will be giving to looking at being able to provide social housing for those who need it.
Well, I can give you one part of the response. In the past, the affordable housing for rent that's been provided through the developer contributions on large sites has been a mixture of tenures. It is still a mixture of tenures, but where it's now 100% rented, the requirement under the JLP is for social housing, social rent only, not affordable rent. I think that's correct, isn't it, Izzy? Can you confirm that, please, and say what else we're doing?
Yes, I can. And Alex Rayhag is also on the call, who can give more detail about the social affordable element, if that's helpful. Alex, you?
Yes.
Good morning, members. Yeah, I can confirm what Councillor Pearce has just said, that yes, the JLP does set out that we ask for social rent in the first instance. So we have been successful in achieving that, and we hope to continue into the future. There's a lot of different pots of money that Homes England have at the moment, and actually more properties can be provided at social rent if they aren't included in a Section 106. So we have been quite successful with that down at Sherford. So just to update on that.
Thank you very much. You're a bit faint, Councillor. Alex. So I hope everybody's managed to hear you all right.
Sorry, I'll put my head nearer to my laptop.
That's better. Thanks.
Thank you for that. Thank you for that, Chairman. I'm glad to see that this is being given priority. I think a lot of members will agree that affordable doesn't really mean affordable in this part of the world, and the more stress we can put on social housing that really people really can afford, I think would be good.
Yeah, and this is a representation we're making to government at the moment.
Thank you.
Right. I think that's all the questions. So, Councillor Bastow, would you like to propose the recommendations?
Yes, I'll propose the recommendations for the housing strategy and public consultation.
Second.
I'll second. I'm happy to second that. Now we can move into the debate. I don't know, members of the executive, are there any comments you wish to make on this paper?
No, thank you.
No?
Yes. Oh.
Yes, Councillor Bastow. Sorry, Councillor Hawkins has got his hand up.
Yes, let Councillor Hawkins go first.
Fine.
Right, thank you very much. I think this strategy and policy is really good, and I'm glad we're going out to consultation. It's easily to read, which I find very helpful, obviously. And I share Councillor Panel's issues that we have got to provide affordable housing for people social rented, etc., for local people to be able to still live in the South Hams. I do feel that some of our communities are becoming millionaires, holiday accommodation communities, and we have got to provide homes for local people that can actually afford them. And I think that should be one of our priorities, and I know that it is. But we've really got to achieve that in the next few years.
Thank you. Councillor Bastow.
Thank you, Chairman. I just wanted to say thank you to Councillor Brazil and Councillor Panel and Councillor Hawkins for their comments. Going ahead with the delivery plan, some of that may be affected by the outcome of the consultation, but yes, we're adamant that we will produce a delivery plan. And as you quite rightly say, we have a look at that on an annual basis. That's all I wanted to say at this stage. I might come back at the end if I can, Chairman.
Thank you. I'd like to make a comment at this stage. I do think that whilst delivery of new housing is always important, we really need to focus on two things that will help our residents. One of them is lobbying for a better housing allowance in our area, because it's based on house prices and well, it's based on too wide an area to accommodate the very high rents we have in the South Hams, and we need a much more locally based and calculated housing allowance to help our residents, because it's often, even with housing allowance, costing them over £100 a month towards their rent, when technically the housing allowance should pay their rent for them. So that's one thing. And the other thing we're continually lobbying the housing associations about is better use of current stock. And I think one of our actions needs to be that we work as closely as we can with the housing associations to make sure that we do have better use of current stock, and that we offer and help people downsize to free up 3-bedroom houses. It's often said that it's difficult to move people out of the family home where the family's grown up and all the rest of it. But often, if we can offer better accommodation, more suited to people's present needs, it's a bit of a no-brainer. And I'd far rather move people before they have a problem than force them into accommodation they may not particularly like when they do suddenly have a problem but don't have much of a choice. So I think choice is the important thing in this. Right, do we have any, Councillor Basten, do you want to come back, or is your hand just
No,
still...
sorry, that's...
Sorry, don't worry,
yeah.
I'll move over.
Councillor Birch wanted to ask a question.
Right, yes, Councillor Birch, please, yes, come in,
Yeah.
Councillor Birch.
Okay, a couple of questions and a comment. First of all, in the report at 5.1, it makes reference to West Devon making a decision at their hub meeting on the 1st of December. What was their decision? Because quite obviously it's a joint document. Am I right in thinking that, as it hasn't been mentioned, that they actually agree with, presumably they received an identical report, and presumably they passed the recommendations that came before them on the 1st? That's my first question. My second question is that, bearing in mind it is a joint document covering West Devon and South Hams, and bearing in mind that our housing needs in South Hams are to a certain extent different than those in West Devon, will the responses received in the consultation, will they be separated? In other words, there won't be a mishmash of West Devon and South Hams comments. In other words, we as members can home in on the South Hams comments. That was my second question. And my third comment is, I think it would be very helpful for us to send the draft strategy to our MPs and invite their comments, because I think they ought to be fully aware of our proposed strategy, and I believe their comments may be helpful. Thank you.
Yep, thank you, Councillor Birch.
Three good questions, Chairman.
Yeah, that's right. Now, do you want to answer them? Do you want me
Well,
to
the
answer?
first one I can't because I didn't attend the meeting on Tuesday, but perhaps Isabel can answer that one.
Yes. I'm pleased to say that West Devon did endorse all those recommendations that are put before you as well. So that hurdle is crossed, jumped.
And the second one, which was about separating South Hams and West Devon, and I'm sure we're going to do that. Isabel will confirm that for me.
Yes, so some of our partners work across some of our larger RPs, some of the relationships we have with Devon County and other such partners. Those will they will fill in one answer representing both their work across South Hams and West Devon. One of our real key parts of this consultation will be using social media, and South Hams and West Devon both have different pages, so that will be quite easy to separate. And with our partners as well, as part of the survey, one of the things that we will ask is, one of the first questions will be, do you represent South Hams or West Devon? So hopefully there will be as much separation, but there will also be an element of joint where partners stretch across the two areas.
And the third question, and yes, we will send a copy to our two MPs, won't we, Isabel?
We will, yes, indeed.
Yeah, and if I could just comment on that, I think there would be some latitude for differentiating between the two councils when it comes to the work programme, because I think we might have slightly different priorities because of our different circumstances, whereas the strategy is common to all, and I think brings up all the problems and very good points that need to be made about what we need to do in both councils. I think the emphasis on how it's to be done may vary between the two councils. Will it be possible to have two different work programmes?
I think what will happen is it will be one document, and it will say around whether those are joint actions that we can partner across the two, or whether there will be South Hams or West Devon specific ones. For example, in the strategy it does allude to a West Devon extra care scheme. We've had one recently in South Hams in Totnes, so the need isn't so acute in South Hams. So there will be some differences, of course, and we will make sure that the delivery plan reads clearly so that everybody reading it will understand which are South Hams, which are West Devon, and which are joint.
Okay, that sounds fine to me. Councillor Bastone, are you happy with that?
Fine, Chairman.
Good.
Have you come to the end now for me to sum up? Or?
We have, yes. Can we pass to the vote on this, please? Are you all happy?
Could I just make a couple of comments?
Oh, sorry. Yes, of course.
Yeah. As you can see, this has been an extensive exercise in putting this policy together, and we're very fortunate. We've got a brilliant team who've done this, and we've seen examples this morning of how quickly they can answer your questions and provide useful information. And they are a brilliant team. I've worked with them for several years now, and I cannot fault them. They are excellent. So I just wanted to say that, Chairman, those of you who've read the policy fully will realise that it is a really good document, and the suggestion from Councillor Birch to send copies to our MPs is, I have to say, it's brilliant, and we'll do that. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Thanks for that. Are we all happy with the recommendations at the head of this paper? Yes?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. Right, we will move on to item 11, which is the allocation.
Leader, sorry.
Yes.
We've been going for 2 hours. Can we have a short break, please? Because
we've got
three more items.
I'm glad you said that, Keith.
It's 12:05. We will come back at 12:10. Thank you. It is 12:11 now. I've got my executive here. Is everybody else ready to go? I'll take it that if I don't hear anything, we are. I hope my big screen doesn't turn itself off. Right, Councillor Bastone has reminded me that we did not look at the forward plan at the beginning of the meeting. So I suggest we go to that item before we move on to the allocation of the Section 106 funds, and quickly have a look at the forward plan, which I hope will be non-controversial. But members of the executive, is there anything you wish to raise on this one?
No.
No.
No. Other members, is there anything you want to raise? I think there are several things that we have said will be inserted in this at a suitable date as soon as possible. But does anybody want to make any comments? Because if you do, please comment now in the comment box. I can't see anything coming up, which is what I would expect. I don't think there's anything controversial there in time-wise or otherwise. So we will now go to item 11, which is the allocation of Section 106 funds for open space, sport and recreation projects. Councillor Hawkins, this is your paper to introduce, please.
Right, thank you, Leader. This is a kind of early Christmas present to these communities, which I think is a really nice thing to do, to actually progress with these projects, which are very important to our communities. The council has secured S106 funds for a number of open space, sport and recreation projects. The council's financial procedure rules require that where expenditure is proposed over £30,000, this will be authorised by the executive. The purpose of this report is to request the release of allocation of 106 funds over the £30,000 for delivery of a number of projects in the South Hams. The release of funds will allow the provision of enhancements to open space, sport and recreation facilities to mitigate the impacts of specific developments. The secured funds are from development in the following wards: Bickley and Cornwood, but with some of the projects in Plymouth City Council area, as well as in Bickley and Cornwood Ward, Dartington and Staverton, Ivybridge West. The funds from this are from projects in both Ivybridge wards and Ermington and Borough Ward, and Malden and Little Hempston. The recommendations of the report are as follows. Allocation of 106 funds for OOSR listed in Table 1 from developments in Bickley, Cornwood, Dartington, Staverton and Liverpool, I do apologise, Ivybridge West wards, to approve the release of allocation of the S1 funds for the space, sport and recreation projects as set out in Table 1. 2, that where a project is identified, the agreement of specific details be delegated to the head of placemaking in consultation with the ward members and portfolio holder. 3, agreement to any substitution of alternative projects to those identified in Table 1 shall be delegated again to the head of placemaking in consultation again with the ward members and portfolio holders. The recommendations are in Table 2 for Malden and Little Hempston, have been updated as follows and shown on the slide, I believe. Yep. Allocation of 106 funds list in Table 2 for Malden and Little Hempston Ward. In view of further public consultation undertaken by the Parish Council recently, and the amount of grant applied for representing a proportionally small amount of the total costs of the renewal works identified by the Parish Council as being necessary to approve the allocation of £45,000 towards the renewal of Torfield Play Area, subject again to the Director of Place Enterprise being satisfied as value for money. The release of these funds will also be subject to confirmation that funding for the remainder of the project has been secured by the parish. To approve the allocation of the remainder of the funds available in Malden in accordance with the parish plan. 2, the agreement of details of the specific projects for the OSSR plan to be delegated again to the head of marketing, making consultation with the ward member and the portfolio holder. With regard to renewal of the Torfield Play Area in Malden, questions were raised at the last executive meeting, as we know. The main points raised are summarised in the report on paragraph 5.11. Since that time, the Council has received further emails. Some of these reiterate the concerns at the last executive meeting and ask questions about the consultation and procurement process undertaken by the Parish Council. These are in full support of the proposals, expressing the need for children of Malden to have a safe, fun and updated play area. The comments received have been circulated to all members in advance of this meeting. It is understood that in the last 2 weeks, the Parish Council, as we have said, has undertaken a survey in relation to the play area project, with 252 responses, and 82 of these are in favour of a proposed play area at Torfield. If I can just perhaps pass over now to Alex Huggins, if that's acceptable, Leader.
Yes, it is. Alexis, would you like to come in and talk further about this paper, please?
Yes, thank you. First of all, can I just clarify that on that last point with the public consultation, it was 82% of people in favour, not 82 people.
Sorry, I thought I said 80. Sorry, I thought I said percent. Sorry.
No, that's not a problem. So in addition to the revised recommendations, there are also a number of clarifications in respect of the report. So I'm just going to run through these. In paragraphs 2.5 and 5.2, the report refers to projects in the following wards: Bickley and Cornwood, Dartington and Staverton, and Ivybridge West. And I just wanted to clarify that in respect of the Bickley and Cornwood ward, the development generating the funds is in Bickley and Cornwood, but the projects proposed, as Councillor Hawkins said, are in both the Plymouth City Council area as well as Bickley and Cornwall. And similarly, in respect of the Ivybridge West ward, the development generating the funds is in Ivybridge West, but the projects proposed cover both of the Ivybridge wards and the Ermington and Ugborough ward. Also, paragraphs 5.12 to 5.14 of the report refer to the allocation of funds in respect to the Torfield play area, and these paragraphs are replaced by the revised recommendations that are shown on the slide. Finally, the table 2 on page 101, there's in the report that you've seen in the packs, there's a reference to the allocation of up to 45,000 for the Torfield play area, subject to the conditions set out in section 2 of Appendix 1. The reference to section 4.2 of Appendix 1 is in error, and this is now replaced by the revised recommendations, which are on the slide. So I think that's everything. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Are we all clear then what we're talking about now? I'm very grateful to the extra work that's been put in by officers to get this paper updated, and in particular to clarify the wards in which works are going to take place, and also to get an answer to Malden Parish Council, because I know from the many emails I've received that many children in the parish are looking forward to great improvements in their play park equipment. And don't we all know it, that childhood is but a flash, and it's important that these children have that equipment to play on as soon as possible. So do I have any questions from executive members on this paper? Councillor Hopwood.
Thank you, Chairman. Just out of interest, how would you split if it's section 106 money between two councils? What would the split be? How do you work out the split of money?
Councillor Hopwood, it's not so much a split of the money, it's the projects that the money is going to go to, and it just so happens that the locations of those projects, for instance, in Tamerton Foliot, that the nearest suitable outdoor space is actually in Plymouth City, because as you know, it's right on the boundary. But I'll ask Alexis if she's got any further comments on that.
Yes, thank you. So obviously, as Councillor Pearce has said, the residents living within the new development will use the closest sports facilities, regardless of which local authority area they sit within. And so both a site in Plymouth at Aylesbury Crescent and the Roborough Recreation Ground were named in the Section 106 agreement, and that's been carried across to this recommendation. The split will actually be decided. We'll look at the projects identified in the playing pitch strategy, and it'll be quite dependent on what match funding they can secure from potentially the national sports governing bodies or other sources. So we'll have to look at the merits of that, and that will that's the recommendations is that specific detail is then delegated, and the ward member and the portfolio holder will be consulted on that.
All right. Okay, fine. Thank you. Any more questions? Any questions from the floor then, please? From other members? No, there aren't. Right. Well, it was necessary for Councillor Hawkins to introduce the recommendations in his introduction for obvious reasons, because there have been so many changes, but they are on the screen. Would you like to formally propose those now, please, Councillor Hawkins?
Can I propose the recommendations on page 97 and as on the screen, please?
Thank you. I'm happy to second those.
Right, thank you.
Right, so let's move into comments and debate. Executive members, any comments on this, please?
Could I just comment as the local county councillor?
Yes, yep.
For Malden, I'm absolutely delighted that this money is progressing and will be released to the parish council. It is a project which has been long running, and the play area at Torfield has been out of action for many months, and that beautiful summer it was closed. So this hopefully will ensure that this play area will be back up and running for the spring of this year, hopefully.
Thank you very much. Any other members of the executive, do you wish to comment or debate on anything?
No comment from me, Chairman.
Okay, good. Well, I do hope that all these projects are able to move forward as fast as possible. Particularly, actually, as well as Malden, all the other amounts of Section 106 money that are around. And I do encourage all members to go back to your parish councils and ask them what they want this money spent on. And I would remind you that Section 106 money is collected because it is seen as reasonably necessary to make the development acceptable to local people. So it really is up to parish councils to bring forward projects which will benefit the new residents and the existing residents in the parish to make the development acceptable. And that's really important. It is a way of encouraging development into an area, but not making local people feel they've been put upon. And so please all do that. Numbers of you have amounts in your wards that are important and do need spending. Right, end of broadcast on that. Councillor Baldry, you've got your hand up.
I have two quick points. One, I was going to say what you've just said, but we've got bogged down a bit in Malden and the special problems of Malden, but this is across a much wider area, and it's money that is being sensibly spent on play areas. So as well as Malden, I just want to say I think it is an excellent bit of progress. But also I was about to say what you have just said, Leader. It is not just parish councils, it is members as well who have a part to play in finding uses for the S106 money.
I would agree with that, Councillor Baldry, thank you. If I have no more comments from executive members, I'm happy to take any comments from other members now, if any other members, but I don't see anything in the box. I don't think there are any, in which case we will pass executive to taking the decision. Are you all happy with these recommendations, particularly taking into account the new recommendations which are in red, and those are being shown for the last time now? Is everybody happy?
Yes.
Yes, Chairman.
Right. Thank you very much. And I would like to thank officers for all the extra work that's been involved in this paper over the last week or so, when there are so many other things on. But thank you for getting it sorted out. And I hope now that the residents of Malden will be happy with the result. Let's move on to item 12 on the agenda, which is the school's recycling service. And Councillor Baldry, this is up to you. And I can see that Natalie is sitting there ready, should she be needed to help you.
And I'm sure she will, Leader. Just the paper is as before you. It is the opportunity has arisen to review this, been forced upon us because of the proposed changes in the recycling service, where in the past we have provided a free service to schools. It is not a mandatory requirement to provide a free service, and in particular when we move into the new service, the items at present collected in sacks will in future be collected in boxes, and the number of boxes which some of our larger schools would require would be enormous to replace the sacks. So we have within the paper, as you can see, two options. I'm strongly recommending that we go for option one rather than withdrawing the free service altogether, and we will be continuing, rather than for normal residents who will not have will only have a couple of boxes, we will be providing for the smaller schools, older schools, 6 boxes and 2 reusable sacks to put their recycling in. But outside of that, the larger schools, and there are some very large schools and very large budgets within our district, we would expect them to use the trade waste service. Can I bring in Natalie now to add anything, please, Leader?
Yes, of course. Yes.
Natalie.
Yeah, nothing to add at this time, but definitely on hand for questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Members of the executive, do you have any questions to Councillor Baldry? No?
No.
Are there any questions from other members?
No.
I don't see any coming up. Right, Councillor Baldry, would you like to propose the recommendations then, please?
Yes, thank you. The recommendations are at the top of the paper. I propose them, and that I recommend that we go for option 1, which is to continue to provide a free service to our schools and provide them with 6 boxes and 2 reusable sacks when the changes are made in March.
Happy to second that.
Thank you, Councillor Hawkins. Just to add that, of course, Appendix A outlines the proposed policy for this service in more detail.
Of course. Thank you. Thank you very much, Councillor Baldry. Any comments or debate from the executive members? I think we've all previously shown that we're in agreement with this policy. Did I see Councillor Brazil wishing to come in and comment? Yes, I do.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Obviously, welcome the fact that we could continue the free collecting of recycling from schools. Slightly disappointed that we're not going to allow schools that haven't done it before to become involved. And I do think that the last 2 points, particularly G, you know, I don't think that would be the case. If they've got lots of recycling, then I'm sure they could do it in the way that they should. You know, part of the whole green agenda is the education bit of it, and I think that we should be seen to be supporting schools as much as we can. You know, I hope that if a school does come forward and say we'd like you to include us in the recycling as well, that we won't be saying no, you can't. Having said all that, I accept that money's tight, and so I can see sort of some reasons. One other suggestion might be, I wonder if we take the opportunity to send our officers into schools to help to explain to the children and the students what recycling is all about, where it goes, that kind of thing, because I think that's all useful, and they may even go home and help their parents do it. Thank you. Very
good points, Councillor Brazil. Natalie will come in a minute and tell you that we do send people, and people do from the county as well, go into schools on recycling. It is younger people who are very, very enthusiastic about recycling, and I totally agree with you. It is the younger people who then educate us older ones. Natalie, do you want to say anything?
Yes, just to follow up on what you've said in terms of we do have an arrangement through a county-wide contract with Resource Futures where we offer workshops and assemblies, etc., to schools. As part of the rollout of the new service, we intend to engage significantly with schools in the obviously within safe limits, but that is definitely our plan to use that source.
Thank you.
Councillor Brazil, I'm slightly surprised that your grandson is not indoctrinating you already, because my experience is that young children come home from school with very firm ideas on using, reusing and recycling. And also, I will ask Natalie if she could possibly send you a photograph of the recycling that was left out at one of our high schools. We won't name it, but there is a very good photograph that will perhaps explain to you why we don't have an unlimited free recycling service anymore. Natalie, would you be able to do that?
Yes, happy to send that over.
Refer, I think, don't you?
Yes, I definitely do.
All right. Thank you very much. Okay, is there anybody else who wants to comment from the floor? Because if not, please get it up in the box now. If not, members of the executive, can we vote on that recommendation And I think we're all in favour of it, as far as I know. But
Except,
yes.
Fine.
Okay. Right. Thank you very much. And we will move on to item 13, which is the granting of a long lease at the Valley playing fields in Ivybridge. And Councillor Bastone, over to you for this, please.
Thank you, Chairman. Ivybridge Football Club occupy part of the Valley playing field site on land leased from South Hams District Council. The club wish to improve their facilities and are progressing plans for an improvement scheme for which they are seeking grant funding from a number of sources. The club's existing lease has only 10 years remaining. However, to secure funding, a long lease is required. Therefore, it is proposed a long lease of about 25 years be granted. This new lease could be agreed with the club direct, but Ivybridge Town Council wish to support the club proposals, and both parties have requested that the Town Council are granted the long lease. Currently, the playing fields are maintained by South Hams District Council. These proposals will see the Town Council taking responsibility for their maintenance, as they are for other parks and open spaces in Ivybridge. There is a cost saving for South Hams District Council as a result, and therefore a nominal rent is proposed for the new lease. In summary, these proposals will not change the situation on the ground. The football club will remain in occupation, but are able to access funding for improved facilities, and the playing fields remain accessible to the general public, but are maintained and managed by the Town Council. And I'm asking for your support on this, because Ivybridge Football Club are a good club going and trying to go forward with improvements at the ground. So I'll leave it there, Chairman, other than to say I've got Laura Watton with me if you've got any technical questions.
Thank you very much, Councillor Bastone. Well, I think this is this sounds like a win-win situation and a good news story all round. So thank you very much, Laura, for negotiating the terms of it. Members of the executive, have you got any questions for either Councillor Bastone or Laura?
No questions.
No? No questions. Right. Are there any questions from the floor, particularly from the Ivybridge members? Do you have anything to ask Councillor Bastone or Laura on this? Okay. Right, Councillor Bastone, would you like to formally propose? Oh, hang on. Yes, please. Hang on. No questions from Lance, but yes, please, from Councillor Abbott.
Thank you very much. Just a very minor point, really. If you look at the map, which is on page 119, the ownership boundaries are all over the place at the northern end, and this may be irrelevant in the great scheme of things. I just wondered whether there's an opportunity to tidy this up at the same time, because going through a building and going around the pitch, which is what we're trying to do to give them a lease. Is this worth doing, or am I just talking rubbish?
Laura, would you like to answer that one? I think it's probably a technical question.
Well, I was just going to say that Councillor Abbott never talks rubbish, surely. I thought he was going to ask for a cycle route across the field. But I'll hand over to Laura.
Thank you, Councillor Bastone and Councillor Abbott. I will look at that with our legal team. We're negotiating at the moment for heads of terms. So once we actually get to entering the lease document, we'll look at the particular issues around the title documents and see if there's anything that can be done around that.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Right. Okay. Thanks very much for that. Councillor Bastone, would you like to propose the recommendations formally then, please?
Yes, I will move the recommendation of granting of a long lease at Arun Valley playing fields to Ivybridge Town Council.
Second.
Right, thank you. And any comments from the executive? No? Oh, Councillor Baldry.
I Well, I'm going to, the trite comment is I see that Laura Watton and Vic Abbott are sitting in the same field as we look at that. I'm going to endorse everything you said, Leader. This is a good news story. It is a very successful football club and we all wish them well. From my experience in another life, in order to get any sort of funding from outside places, you need leases of the length of about 25 years. And this is a way to allow them to raise that money. Thank you.
Right, thank you very much. Actually, your first remark to Councillor Abbott was not a trite one because he's not a committee member of this committee, so he should have changed his background. But right, thanks for that. Do we have any comments from the floor? Maybe one from Councillor Abbott saying he's changed his background or he's not changing his background or whatever. But do we have any comments on this paper from the floor? No. Well, in that case, let's move to the recommendation and agree that members of the executive, are you all in agreement with this paper?
So
yes.
In agreement.
I see everybody agreeing. Thank you.
Carried. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Well, that concludes this morning's business. So I am going to close the meeting now. Thank you very much to everybody who's participated this morning.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good
Bye.
afternoon.